Hey, welcome to this beginner art course, the series in which I break down art, theory and practice into easy to digest, bite-sized chunks. I'm Erin, and you're watching episode 5, where we're going to be making our very own sketchbook for next to no money. Sketchbooks are convenient. They provide a single place for us to draw and sketch, and show a chronological progression of our work. Unfortunately, sketchbooks can be really expensive, and especially when you start getting into thicker paper, they really skyrocket. So I'm showing you this method, which allows you to make custom sketchbooks for barely any more than the price of the paper. If you're buying paper as loose leaves as well, then you can get it far cheaper, and sometimes even find listings at wholesale prices. In this method, we are recycling HDPE plastic bags, which are the thin ones you get from supermarkets, into usable, thicker sheets. For a project like this, where we're not going to be making the plastic crazy thick, we can get away with just using an iron, but if you are worried about delaminating or air bubbles, then just put it in the oven with a weight on it for a few minutes. That'll fuse the sheets a little better, but I found the process worked fine just putting a bit of weight behind the iron. In total, we are using 10 bags. To prepare the bags, just lay them out flat, cut off the bottom seam and then the handles, leaving us with a tube. I found the most efficient way to turn the tube into equal sized sheets was to fold the outside edges together, and then fold the same again, which will gather all the seams that need cutting into one place. I then folded the bag vertically into thirds to make that cut shorter and simply took it off with a pair of scissors. Once we have our individual sheets cut to size, we can begin fusing them together in sets of 4. To do this, you want a rigid, heat-proof surface. I put a sheet of ply and hardboard on top of my table. You want to put the plastic in between sheets of greaseproof paper or baking parchment so that it doesn't stick to the surface of the table or melt onto your iron. I just took 2 big sheets that were comfortably large enough. For the first fusing, you don't need to apply the heat for too long as it's not so far that it has to penetrate, and also as the sheets are so thin, you're at risk of burning a hole in them. Make sure you apply pressure to the iron and work from the centre out to the edges to avoid air bubbles. After fusing all the plastic together into sets of 4, it's time to double up the sets. Get 2 sets of 4 together in between your parchment and get to ironing. You can move slightly slower as the sheets are thicker, but it's best to just move constantly while applying pressure and then flip it over and come at it from the other side. Do this a few times to make sure that the heat is penetrating right through the stack and fusing all of the layers. After that pass, we should have 5 sets, each composed of 8 sheets. For the front of mine, I combined 2 of these 8 ply sets and the back had the remaining 3. Again, it's just a case of working over methodically, applying heat and pressure and coming in from both sides until you're satisfied that it's fused. We now want to cut off the waning edge, keeping the useful area of plastic. Onto the actual book. First of all, we need to know what size we want. I went with 180 by 120mm landscape, so quite a small book. We want to cut the cover material to that size. I used a piece of card that I knew had a square corner on it as a guide, and later as well cut this to size as a jig. Once the covers were to size, I marked a line on the spine of one about 20mm in from the edge to guide the holes. I wanted 4 holes, so I divided my overall height by 5 to work out the spacing. Marked the holes with a Sharpie and then used the awl to punch through. I then used this first cover as a jig to punch the holes into the other one. So next is to sort out the paper. It's personal preference what you use and how much, but I'm going with standard copy paper around 80 GSM, which is fine for dry media, but it's hot pressed, so there's no texture to it. I don't know exactly how many sheets I used, I just gauged it off what thickness felt best to me. I can't stand thin sketchbooks, and normally I err on the side of chunky. Because my covers are not standard size, all of the pages I want to use have to be cut. A guillotine would have been lovely, but patience and a craft knife will get you there. Grab the jig of the cover, hold it on top of a stack of pages nice and secure, and using your knife, gently slice down through the pages. Don't try to do them all in one cut, just lots of small cuts. This will get it nice and neat and the blade won't wander. Whatever it is that you're cutting, many small cuts will always get you the best result. I included a patterned end page in mine as well. This is optional, but I think it's a nice custom touch that sets you off in the right direction when you open a book. If you don't have an awl, you can use a thumbtack or a needle or a kitchen skewer or something else with a point. To make the holes in the pages, take a group, and I start with around a quarter of mine. Align your front cover on top and push your awl down hard through the holes in your cover. It's best to do this on a soft surface as the awl will want to try and come out of the other side. If, like me, you have quite a thick bundle of pages, you'll want to make all of your holes first while it's held securely down, and then twisting and supporting the back of the pages. Work the awl through. Try not to cause any creasing when doing this. Repeat this process, using the front cover as a jig each time until all of your pages are punched. Now, the fun part. The stitching we will be using is Japanese stitching. This stitching is really useful to learn because it means you can make an A4 sketchbook with A4 paper. Most stitching methods require a fold, meaning that unless you're going to go out of your way to find and pay the premium on A3, you're going to be stuck with A5 as your biggest book. We want to thread our needle, preferably with something slightly thicker than thread. I used a 1mm hemp cord, but if you are using thread, double thread your needle to make it stronger. You want to start off with one of your middle holes, stitching from about halfway through your book and leaving a comfortable tail inside. We stitch to the outside, wrap around the spine and back in through the same hole, this time stitching right the way through. If you're struggling getting the needle through, push it with a hard surface and then work your awl into the hole alongside it to enlarge it just enough to pull through. Then we can go down through the next hole, up around the spine and back through, stitch to the next hole, around the spine and back through. We've reached the final hole now, so we want to take the thread around the edge of the book this time before going back through the hole a third time. To fill in the gaps, we just stitch our way back up the holes and repeat the pattern for the other end hole, around the spine and then around the end. Finally, stitch back to the first hole we stitched and carefully push the needle through to where our initial tail is and tie them off securely. To do a double knot that won't slip, just think left behind, left in front, and that will do you a reef knot. Cut off the tails and push the ends up into the spine area. So that's it. That's your finished book, and it's made with tools and materials that you almost definitely already have or can improvise. I'm going to talk about different types of paper for just a moment because I know for me, I was really confused and daunted at all the different words thrown around regarding paper, all about weight and acid-free and hot-pressed or cold-pressed, and I just ended up not buying things and not exploring because I didn't want to spend money on things I didn't understand, so I ended up drawing on copy paper for way too long. The two biggest factors to bear in mind are the texture and the weight. The texture will affect how your medium appears. For example, using a pastel on a smooth surface will give you a clean block of colour, but use it on a very rough surface and the pattern of the page will show through. The most common terms are rough, knot, and hot pressed. So, rough paper is where the pulp is pressed in a mould without any heat added. This gives a bumpy texture which can make for some accidental variation in shading, but it can be used for helping to add some texture and depth in things like watercolour. Medium paper is known as knot, which just means that it has not been hot pressed. It can also be called cold pressed or CP. It generally has some slight texture to it, but not nearly as much as the rough paper. Again, this can be used with watercolour effectively, but it also lends itself to graphite or pastel or charcoal, which can really play up the texture. Smooth paper, or hot pressed or HP, is paper that has been hot rolled in manufacture, which makes it really smooth. This is especially great for fine, detailed drawings. And then we have weight. The copy paper I used in this book was 80 GSM, but normally art papers start at around 120 and go up from there. GSM stands for grams per square metre. For using dry media, you're not restricted anywhere near as much, and really anything over that 120 will do you. Watercolour papers start around 190 and I've seen up and over 800 GSM, but you will be paying for it. With papers below around 220, 230, the pages want stretching before painting to keep them from buckling. As for acid-free, it just means that the pulp was neutralised in the manufacturing process. You want acid-free materials to help the longevity of your images. Acidity can cause little brown spots to appear and pigments to fade. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope it's been helpful, and good luck if you do choose to make your own sketchbook. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, hit that subscribe button, and as always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.